In the summer of 1941, Nazi Germany embarked on the invasion of the Soviet Union, driven by a desperate ideological desire to seize the legendary agricultural wealth of Ukraine. Conceived by State Secretary Herbert Backe, a calculated strategy known as the Hunger Plan was designed to resolve a critical, permanent deficit in Germany's domestic food security. Haunted by the memory of the British naval blockade during the First World War, which starved the German home front, Hitler determined to prevent a repeat of this domestic collapse. The physical foundation of this grand design was the legendary black soil of Ukraine, which possessed some of the highest concentrations of organic nutrients in the entire world. German planners projected that Ukraine could easily function as a self-sustaining breadbasket, solving the Reich's food crisis and feeding the advancing frontline Wehrmacht divisions overnight. According to Backe's explicit projections, the diversion of Ukrainian crops to Germany would require the deliberate planned starvation of over 30 million Soviet citizens in northern industrial cities. But this predatory plan was built upon a fundamental, catastrophic misunderstanding of modern industrial agriculture and the delicate, complex balance of 20th century agrarian logistics. The high pre-war yields of Ukrainian agriculture were not merely the natural result of fertile soil, but were completely dependent on a highly centralized, industrialized infrastructure. When the Wehrmacht invaded, the retreating Red Army executed a devastating, highly coordinated, scorched-earth campaign, deliberately targeting vital machine tractor stations to prevent their capture. Soviet authorities evacuated or destroyed over 80% of the heavy tractors in Ukraine, systematically removing critical engine blocks, fuel injection pumps, and steering linkages. German administrators were completely unable to supply replacement tractors from the Reich, forcing peasants to return to primitive manual labor using hand scythes and wooden plows. This manual regression was a physical and mathematical impossibility. Millions of acres of fertile black soil remained completely uncultivated, while vast crops rotted in the damp fields. With the tractor fleet decimated, German occupiers were forced to fall back on animal draft power, attempting to use horses to pull plows and haul critical food supplies. But this fallback plan immediately collided with the Wehrmacht's tactical logistics. German infantry divisions were completely dependent on horse-drawn transport for their daily mobility and supply. The German army requisitioned over 2 million draft horses, leaving collective farms with only a tiny fraction of the animal labor needed to break the heavy clay-like soil. Even where tractors survived, they were rendered completely useless by a catastrophic lack of fuel and chemical inputs. The German chemical industry diverted all synthetic nitrates to explosives production. This systemic diversion caused a rapid, severe decline in the nutrient quality of Ukrainian soil. Without synthetic nitrates, crops grew thin and weak, highly vulnerable to weed choking. The fuel crisis was even more absolute. The Reich strictly rationed petroleum, prioritizing frontline panzer divisions while granting agricultural administrators a completely negligible fuel quota. A quantitative post-mortem of Germany's occupation reveals that the Ukrainian breadbasket was a self-defeating illusion. Actual grain collection figures were a minute fraction of projections. The economic cost of extracting this meager surplus was staggeringly high. Brutal grain requisitions and systematic starvation triggered a massive, violent rise in partisan resistance. To combat these partisan networks and protect vital railway lines, the Wehrmacht was forced to divert hundreds of thousands of frontline infantrymen, severely weakening their combat lines. Instead of acting as a net source of energy and nourishment for the Axis war effort, occupied Ukraine became a massive parasitic sinkhole of German fuel and military manpower. The Hunger Plan succeeded only in alienating the local population, driving them into the arms of the partisan movement, and starving millions of innocent civilians without delivering any benefit. The agrarian illusion of Ukraine proved that modern agricultural production cannot be secured through brutal force alone, sealing the mechanical, logistical, and ultimate defeat of the Axis.